So, the VP debate is coming up, and I know you're like really fascinated by JD Vance.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting one, that's for sure.
Honestly, his whole like journey from, author to like maybe VP candidate.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, like out of a political thriller or something.
It's definitely not the usual path, that's for sure. To go from, writing a bestseller
Yeah.
to like figuring out the Senate and now maybe, just maybe,
Heartbeat away.
yeah, heartbeat away from the presidency.
It's crazy, right? And it all happened so fast, like within just a few years.
Yeah, it's really remarkable when you think about it.
It really is. And what I'm really curious about, honestly, is how this guy is going to be in this VP debate,
Yeah.
Like, how's he going to handle himself? Because, I mean, this is like a whole different ballgame now.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's kind of why we're doing this deep dive today.
Yeah, let's get into it.
We're going through this New York Times article
Okay.
that, like, really breaks down Vance's debating style.
Okay.
Looking back at, his old debates from like the Senate run and all that.
Right.
To see if we can, kind of get a read on him, predict how he might do on the big stage.
I'm interested to hear what they have to say because you don't see this this level of scrutiny of someone's debating past,
I know.
especially someone who's relatively new to politics, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing. He's like really new to all of this.
Right.
Okay, so the Times, they actually went back and watched like hours of this guy's old debates.
Oh, wow. That's dedication.
Yeah, and they said he like seems to love a good debate,
He does always come across as very confident.
Yeah, and he seems to really like mixing it up.
Right. Like, he doesn't shy away from a fight, that's for sure.
No, he jumps right in.
Which, I mean, some people might say that's a good thing, right? Shows he's not afraid to stand up for what he believes in.
Right, exactly.
But on the other hand, it could also be, a little off-putting to some voters.
Oh, totally.
Especially those who are maybe looking for someone a little more, presidential.
Right, presidential, exactly.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see which side of him comes out in the VP debate.
Totally, and like even when things got, a little heated, he dove right in.
Yeah, there was that one, I think it was during the Senate race.
Oh, yeah.
Where his opponents, Mandel and Gibbons.
Mandel and Gibbons, those two or something else.
They got into that whole shouting match on stage, remember?
Oh, I remember. I think I blocked it out.
Like, almost came to blows.
Oh, it was ridiculous.
Totally. And Vance, right there in the middle of it, what does he do?
He's loving it.
Basically, yeah. Doesn't shy away, doesn't try to, like, play peacemaker or anything.
Yep.
He jumps in, calls out how absurd the whole thing is, gets everyone laughing.
Which, is a skill in itself.
Oh, absolutely. And then he uses that moment to land a jab at Mandel.
Of course, who, by the way, was ahead of the polls at the time.
Exactly. Making it even riskier, right?
Totally. So what does that tell us about him?
Well, I think it shows he's a gambler. He's willing to take risks, even when the stakes are high. He's quick on his feet, clearly. And he knows how to use humor to disarm people.
Right.
And let's be honest, a little chaos never hurts in politics, does it?
Especially these days, right?
Right. It gets people talking, it gets you noticed.
For sure. So we've got this kind of like chaos-embracing, quick-witted debater.
Yeah, someone who can think on his feet, definitely.
But the big question is, how's that going to play against someone like Tim Walz, who seems to be like the opposite of that?
Right, Walz is a whole different animal, isn't he? He's got that aw shucks kind of vibe.
Yeah, that Midwestern nice thing.
Exactly. And the article compares him to Tim Ryan. Remember him?
Yeah.
Vance's opponent in the Senate race.
Oh, yeah, I remember Ryan.
They describe him as like this folksy everyman, the kind of guy you'd want to have a beer with.
Right, like that relatable guy next door.
Exactly.
Wearing a Cleveland Browns jersey.
There you go. And that's where the comparison to Ryan gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Because both Walz and Ryan, they share this approach, this like Midwestern nice thing.
Right.
And it can be incredibly disarming and surprisingly effective, especially when you're trying to connect with voters on a personal level.
Okay, so how does Vance, with his more like, I don't know, direct style, how's he going to counter that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's something Vance's team is definitely trying to figure out. In fact, according to the article, they brought in Congressman Tom Emmer.
Who's that?
He's another politician, obviously. But they've got him playing the role of Walz in these mock debates they're doing.
Wait, really? They're like creating a Walz clone to prep with?
Pretty much, yeah. They want to throw Vance into the ring with that folksy demeanor, those Midwestern nice tactics, get him ready for anything Walz might throw at him. Because let's be real, this isn't just some, Senate race
I don't know,
anymore.
like the big leagues.
Exactly. The stakes are way higher now.
No kidding. Okay, so we've got Vance being like this chaos-comfortable debater.
Right, comfortable, a little bit of a rumble.
Right, and now his team's prepping him for Walz's style, which is like the total opposite.
Two very different approaches.
Totally, but there's another thing about Vance's experience that this article like highlights, and it's his experience with the media.
Oh, right. They were saying how he's surprisingly good with the press.
Right, like really good. They practically call him a press conference pro.
Which is interesting because a lot of politicians, especially these days, they tend to avoid the media as much as possible.
I know, right?
But not Vance. He's been engaging with reporters, and not just the friendly ones.
Right.
From the very beginning of his campaign.
Yeah.
Like holding Q&A sessions at rallies, taking questions from anyone who has a microphone.
Wow, that's ballsy.
Right. He's faced just about every question imaginable.
It's like he's been in constant like pre-debate mode or something.
Exactly. And all that exposure, all those tough questions, it's probably sharpened his ability to think on his feet.
Right.
Handle pressure, all that good stuff.
So it's like practice makes perfect.
In a way, yeah. But as the article points out, this approach, it's a double-edged sword.
What do you mean?
Well, it's great for honing your skills, but it also gives you more opportunities to, put your foot in your mouth.
Oh, right.
And Vance, he's had a few of those moments, let's just say.
You're talking about that whole thing with the Haitian migrants, right?
Yeah, that one was a doozy.
It did not go over well.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. I mean, it definitely caused a stir, and not in a good way. His comments and then how he tried to explain them, it like really made people scratch their heads.
Yeah, it was a whole thing.
But it does, I guess, show something about how he operates, Like Vance seems totally fine with being provocative, even if it means like stirring up controversy, you know what I mean?
Right. Totally, and that's like putting it mildly, right? He went on CNN, can you believe it, and said he was willing to create stories to get media attention.
I remember that.
Like, what? That's some like next level spin, even for a politician,
It was a bold move, for sure.
Bold's one word for it. I don't know. It seems kind of risky to me, but guess it could work. But that kind of leads us to another like potential landmine for Vance in this debate.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Abortion.
Oh, right. Of course.
Huge issue. And this article, they really get into how Vance has, well, how his stance has kind of shifted since that Senate race.
Well, it is a tricky issue, and it's definitely become even more of a focal point in recent years.
Well, like a complete 180, He went from, like, totally backing a national abortion ban to I don't even know where he stands now, honestly.
It's a little unclear, right? It seems like he's trying to, like, align himself more with,
With Trump.
Yeah, with how Trump's approaching it, which, is a whole other conversation.
Right, because Trump's stance on abortion is, well, it's kind of hard to pin down, isn't it?
That's one way to put it.
But strategically, I kind of get it, Like, on the one hand, if Vance is seen as being in line with Trump on this, it probably goes over well with a big chunk of the Republican base.
Right, it shores up his support with that segment of the electorate for sure.
But, and this is the big but, could it alienate more moderate voters, the ones who might be looking for like a clear, consistent stance, especially on something as sensitive as abortion?
That's the gamble, isn't it?
Totally it gambles.
Because you're right. It's an issue where people often want to know exactly where you stand.
Exactly. So it's like he's playing with fire a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. And the article, they have these examples of Vance, like, dodging questions about it.
No way, really?
Like, he'll just fall back on, well, President Trump's view is...
So he's basically, like, hiding behind Trump on this.
It's kind of like that, yeah. Like, he's not really willing to fully own his stance, or maybe he hasn't quite figured out what his stance even is,
So is that going to work in a debate, though? I mean, can he really get away with that?
I don't know. It's hard to say. It's one thing to try that in, like, a Senate race in Ohio, right?
Right.
But when you're on national television, millions of people watching.
The pressure's on.
Exactly. The pressure's on. And this is where Vance's lack of experience on this kind of stage, it could really show. It could make or break him in this debate, honestly.
No pressure, right. Okay, so you've talked about how Vance seems like totally fine with chaos.
Right, thrives on it almost.
Yeah, and how he handles the media and now this whole abortion thing, which is like a whole other can of worms. But there's like one more thing about his style that this article talks about, and it really like blew my mind.
Let me guess. Are we talking about, the elephant in the room?
Hit the nail on the head.
The Trump influence.
Exactly. The article, it basically says that Vance has, like, picked up some, let's just say, techniques from the Trump playbook.
Which, let's be real, is a pretty extensive playbook when it comes to, let's call them unconventional debating tactics.
Totally. And it's like he's been taking notes this whole time.
Observing the master at work.
Right, exactly. So the article, it specifically mentions this one move that Vance does.
Oh, yeah, what's that? I'm curious now.
Where he, like, deflects criticism by accusing his opponent of the exact same thing they're criticizing him for.
Classic whataboutism.
Yes, that's the one. Like, textbook whataboutism.
It's a bold strategy for sure.
Right, and it can work. Like, it can be really effective at, changing the subject.
Controlling the narrative.
Exactly. And Vance, well, he learned from the best or the worst, depending on how you look at it.
Right, because love him or hate him, you can't deny that Trump was a master of this tactic.
Totally. And they even give, like, a really clear example of Vance using this in the 2022 Senate race. Remember that whole thing?
Refresh my memory.
So Vance gets accused of, like, promoting the Great Replacement theory.
Oh, right, that whole thing. Yikes.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a good look. And instead of, like, addressing it head on, denying it, explaining himself, whatever.
What does he do?
He flips it, he turns it around, and accuses his opponent of being the real racist.
Oh, wow, okay. Talk about a bold move. So he's essentially saying, I'm not racist, you're racist.
Pretty much, yeah. It was a wild moment. And, like, strategically, I kind of see what he was going for.
Right, because it plays on people's emotions, right? It gets them fired up, maybe distracts them from the original issue.
Totally, but it's, like, also super risky, right? It might work on some people.
But it could totally backfire with others.
Absolutely, especially if they see right through it.
Exactly. And that's the thing with these kinds of tactics. It's all about knowing your audience.
Knowing your audience, for sure. Okay, so we've got Vance, the chaos-embracing, media-savvy, Trump-inspired debater who may or may not have a clear stance on abortion.
It's quite the combination.
It really is. So with all of that in mind, what do you think? What can we expect from JD Vance in this VP debate?
It's hard to say, really.
Right.
I mean, he's kind of a wild card,
But totally. Okay, so just to, like, recap, we've got Vance. He seems to, like, almost enjoy the chaos,
Right.
He can definitely think on his feet. He's good with the media. And he's definitely taking some cues from Trump when it comes to debate.
Right, and let's not forget that whole abortion issue, which, could be a real vulnerability for him.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So taking all that into account, what do you think? Like, what are we going to see from JD Vance in this VP debate?
Well, I think it's safe to say we should probably expect the unexpected, right? Like, this is a guy who, he doesn't mind taking risks,
Right.
He'll push the boundaries, he'll go after his opponent, that's for sure. But the real question is, all those instincts, all those tactics, all that, like, Trump-style stuff.
Right.
Can he make that work on, like, a national stage? You know what I mean?
Because it's, like, a whole different audience now. Right?
Exactly. It's one thing to, like, fire up a crowd in Ohio. It's another thing entirely to try to win over the whole country,
Totally. So it's like he's got to walk this fine line now.
Right. He can't be too aggressive, can't be too out there, but he also can't, like, disappear into the background,
Right.
He's got to find a way to be, like, sharp and quick-witted, but not come across as, like, too abrasive,
Yeah.
Right.
And then there's the whole abortion thing. Can he get away with just dodging that question again? Or will he have to, like, actually take a stand?
Because people are going to be listening for that,
Oh, absolutely. This debate, it's a huge opportunity for him, but it's also a huge risk.
Yeah.
It could make or break him.
It's like all eyes are on him right now.
Exactly. And honestly, I think that's probably how he likes it.
That's a good point. He seems to, like, feed off of that kind of pressure.
Right. Like, the higher the stakes, the more he seems to, come alive.
Exactly. Well, this has been fascinating. Thanks for, like, really breaking it all down for us.
Yeah, no problem. It's always interesting to, like, really dig into these candidates, see what makes them tick, how they operate.
Totally. And to everyone listening, thanks for diving in with us today. This VP debate, it's going to be one for the books, I have a feeling. Don't miss it.